let's go to House Bill, oh, I see Sandy Rosenberg has arrived. House Bill 512, Sandy Rosenberg. Why don't you give us your 4 minutes and explain to us the bill?
I obeyed the speed limit coming here from upstairs, so that's why I was a little late, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, well, we're very happy to hear that you're walking responsibly.
And the bill that this committee passed, for the record, Delegate Sandy Rosenberg, the legislation that this committee passed several years ago regarding speed cameras on the JFX, the Jones Falls Expressway, Interstate 83, as anyone from the Baltimore metropolitan area, I think, can attest, that bill has had its desired effect. There are fewer people who are zooming by at excess speeds. What this bill before us today does is say, this is how the money can be spent that is derived from those who are still speeding and still being ticketed. What the bill would do is make it explicit that the money, under the existing law, the money can be used to pay for the system, the ticketing system, and to improve the roadway itself. What the amendments really become the bill. What the amendments do is say that authorize that money can also be used for the exit ramps, for any of the intersections adjacent to those ramps, as well as for pedestrian safety. The one specific example, which does happen to be in the 41st District, is that the Poly Western High School complex is right on Cold Spring Lane, and you now have more than 100 students every morning, every afternoon, taking the light rail to get to this Cold Spring stop, but then walking across the street. So that this bill would make it clear that one of the permitted uses of the revenue generated from the speeding tickets on the JFX is for pedestrian safety, as well as for the roadway at that interchange extending as far as the next traffic light. Okay. In addition, the bill provides that since there's been some reporting that there are a significant number of unpaid tickets, people who have been ticketed but have not paid their fine, the city would be required to report September 1 of each year on what steps it is taking to improve collection of fines, as well as to issue a report every September 1 on how it proposes to use the revenue, what, capital purposes under the broader permitted uses it would be using that revenue for. And I will say, according to DLS, there are 6, I think, interchanges on the JFX, and they are located in all but one of the legislative districts in the city, except for 43. But there are a significant number of people who, if they're heading west to go downtown, they also use the Northern Parkway interchange. So the bill was approved unanimously by the city delegation as amended, and would urge this committee to continue on the path that it began by authorizing the use of the traffic signals, not the traffic signals, the ticketing, the speeding cameras on the JFX by adopting these amendments and this bill, House Bill 512. So thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. Let me call up Liam Davis with the City Department of Transportation. Liam, welcome to the committee. You have 2 minutes, sir. Once you start talking, you have 2 minutes.
It's great to be here, Mr. Chair, and dare I say my favorite committee in all of Annapolis. So I'm merely here for informational purposes to provide an update on the program. I will encourage folks, if you're around, stop by 88 State Circle. We have these pamphlets here that provide a summary on the program thus far. But since citations went live last July, The southbound camera has issued over 108,000 citations, the northbound camera a little bit less at just over 90,000. This corresponds to a 54% drop compared to the 90-day warning period, which means cars are slowing down. The city is finalizing its capital improvement plan for FY24, and there is money appropriated for roadway safety improvements as well as resurfacing. So we are very thankful of this body approving the legislation back in 2021, and I'm available for any questions.
Yeah, I mean, let me first recognize Delegate Ruth, but then I have a couple of questions myself. Delegate Ruth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is simple, Delegate. I have fairly regular occasion to drive in the city, and isn't it so that some of these entrance and exit ramps on 83 and the associated interchanges are quite terrifying to drive on with traffic coming from multiple directions?
Well, I can tell you that getting off at Cold Spring Lane, well, I'll give you two examples. Getting off at Cold Spring Lane heading north, it's bumpity, bumpity bump. It clearly needs to be repaved. And then also, if you get off at Northern Parkway heading north, coming from downtown, it's 4 lanes, and if you want to make the left turn to go onto Falls Road, for me, to say to go to Meadowbrook to swim, most of the time, I stay in the right-hand lane, take a right at Falls Road, and then safely make a U-turn. I don't think I'm violating any laws when I do that. Make a U-turn to head north on Falls Road, because you can't. Now, the city has budgeted money to start addressing the problems at Northern Parkway, but the answer, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I have a number. I mean, I think that I-83 is one of the few roads where I genuinely feel a little scared when driving on it, because it has the killer combination of sharp turns, high speeds, and poor pavement, all in a terrific 1, 2, 3 punch in rapid succession. So, number one, what plans is the city undertaking to make that area where the cameras? Let me back up and say that my memory of it, and I don't drive that road very often, but there's one particularly perilous, curvy area, and that's where the cameras are, correct? For the most part?
They're located southbound, northbound 41st Street near the Pepsi sign. Okay,
all right, perfect. So, question number one, what are you guys doing to make that intersection safer? What are your plans there?
So first and foremost for our CIP coming up, general road resurfacing is what we have planned. So getting that pavement condition up to interstate highway standards is a critical piece that we're looking at. In terms of specifics, in terms of highway safety, we have a number of initiatives we're working on. One is enhanced vegetation management. So these funds has actually helped us cut back a lot of the overgrowth that has been hanging actually into the highway and into the off-ramps and on-ramps, blocking signage. We are also working with a consultant on upgrading all of the signage along the interstate, modernizing the signage. We're looking at upgrading our traffic attenuators that help, if a car kind of veers off as it's going, those, they're kind of like the buckets full of sand that you see on an off-ramp. A lot of those on 83 before this program went live were damaged, and it was challenging for us to replace because they're pretty expensive. That's an example of where we're making those upgrades. Now, longer term, as the program kind of matures and we're able to bank some of this money, it is a federally eligible road, so we can bank money and then tap federal dollars. There are significant capital improvements that are needed for that exact area by the Pepsi sign, just structural improvements that need to be done. But likely the larger scale capital projects are going to require federal funding, which has a longer trajectory. We're focusing right now on shorter term improvements to demonstrate to the legislature and to the public that the money is going back into the interstate.
Okay, I do have one other question, but I'm going to recognize Delegate Love first before asking it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Did you say that funds from these cameras have been used for signage, for cutting back on vegetation on the entrance and exit ramps, and for those sand things on the exit ramps?
So initially, we were programmed some upfront money from finance department that initial year as the program was ramping up. So some of that money actually wasn't really tied to the cameras, but we did get an opinion from city law department that revenue from the cameras, after the camera operations are paid for, city law department did let us know that enhanced vegetation management, enhanced signage could be supported by these revenues. The enabling legislation explicitly said this is supplemental to what we're already programming for the interstate, and I want to be very clear that that's what we're doing in practice.
Got it.
So you want to get the permission to use those funds for a number of intersections, off-ramps and on-ramps. How far are those off and on-ramps from where the cameras are placed?
They're essentially, as Delegate Rosenberg said, part of the interchange. And if you talk to people, within State Highway Administration, they'll explain to you that that interchange is really a critical piece of that interstate system, even though it's technically not on 83 itself. What the delegate talked about with Falls Road and Northern Parkway, a number of cars going off.
No, but these are exits and and on-ramps, are they not, to 83?
Yes.
Okay, so how far are they away from that dangerous area that we wanted to control?
Pepsi sign. Well, there's,
Oh, how far are they from the Pepsi
Yeah.
sign?
well, they're both north and south,
Yeah.
because
Like
they're.
within half a mile or a mile?
It's probably
Cold
a
Spring
little
is
bit
within-
further. So the Pepsi sign, the cameras at 41st Street are closer to Cold Spring Lane. Northern Parkway and Falls Road, which the delegate is referring to, is a little bit further north.
Let me explain to you why it is I'm asking the question. This committee has evolved itself into a philosophy of saying that we will do cameras if there is a dangerous place. We will do the cameras for a limited amount of time, a 5-year sunset, that the proceeds after paying for the expenses have to go to primarily fixing the problem that the camera is addressing. And there was a fourth thing, what am I forgetting? Oh, and the Wyval devices. The devices that tell you what speed you're going, so that, you see you're going 87 miles an hour, and perhaps you should consider, slowing down. So the reason, what I think you were asking for departs from our philosophy with respect to using the money to fix the thing that is specifically dangerous. So if you could respond to that, because I'm not a person who wants to be hyper strict about it, but I do want to uphold that principle, because these are the principles that allow us to pass these bills on the floor of the House without getting too much pushback.
Absolutely. I think what we can say with confidence is the areas that we're looking at, and I think the intent of Delegate Rosenberg's bill is looking at Interstate 83 in Baltimore City as a system. So there's the road itself, but then there's the collector roads that are incorporated into the interchange, the bridges that go over 83, the on-ramps and off-ramps. We're not talking about taking revenue and spending it, in South Baltimore, which is nowhere near 83. It's really focusing on the 83 corridor, those on-ramps and off-ramps immediately off of it. And I think to Delegate Rosenberg's point about Cold Spring Lane and the proximity to Poly Western, there is an MTA light rail stop that's literally located in between the Jones Falls River and the interstate. And there's a ramp that students are forced to go up onto Cold Spring Lane. And if you'd really have to look at it through Google Street View or drive to see it yourself, from a pedestrian standpoint, it's just not safe. And we think that improving those pedestrian, that infrastructure is fully in line with the intent of the program. Even though it's not directly on the interstate itself, it is part of the interchange. It is an interchange with 83.
So, okay, so that would explain to me why you don't think the current law covers it. But you're making the argument that it contributes to the safety of the car traffic in that spot that's dangerous. That's what you're arguing.
There are several hundred students who are, in the morning and in the afternoon, crossing a busy intersection of Cold Spring Lane, a busy thoroughfare, which is an interchange, because of the light rail. And one thing to consider is to have a bridge so that.
A pedestrian bridge?
Pedestrian bridge. And if the committee wants to narrow that language so that it speaks the issue of pedestrian safety, there is the amendment language is pedestrian safety. If you want to narrow that so that it is, it's only the redheaded Cold Spring Lane intersection, if you know.
Thank you for not mentioning Inuit tribes people.
I did not. So if you want to draft an amendment, I'm fine
Okay.
with that.
All right, well, let me recognize Delegate Boyce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Delegate Rosenberg and Liam, for bringing this. And I think if I can help clarify some of the chairman's concerns, one place we didn't mention is coming off of 83 onto St. Paul Street. That is literally, as you're accelerating speed, you're coming onto a ramp that immediately goes on to St. Paul Street and the intersection of Mount Royal. And if you're coming off of high speeds and then coming there, I mean, it literally veers right into like regular road traffic that's about 25, 30 miles an hour. I mean, that in and of itself is unsafe because I can roll right into potential traffic and you have to quickly either stop or see that you have the opportunity and gun it to go onto St. Paul Street. So I would certainly concur that it is a safety issue, especially because of the speeding and then coming off the ramp, off ramps and on ramps are so tight from 83 onto whatever road you're going on, that it's, I think it causes, certainly for me at that intersection, it causes great anxiety. And if there could be something that we could do in the city to lessen that, it would be certainly much useful. And I think certainly not solves the problem, but it solves some of the problems of individuals coming off of 83, speeding onto off the exits.
Any further questions for the sponsor or Mr. Davis? Okay, seeing none then, thank you very much. That concludes the public hearing on House Bill
Thank you.
512. Absolutely.